When I first held my sister baby in my arms and saw my husband's face staring back at me, I felt something inside me go very quiet, like a room where the lights had just been switched off. The living room was full of soft afternoon light, the kind that usually makes everything feel gentle. Dust floated lazily in the air. The fan moved above my head with a low, steady hum. In the corner, the old clock my mother had given us ticked along, stubborn and calm, counting seconds that suddenly felt heavier than they had any right to be. My sister had rushed in only an hour earlier. Hair messy, eyes tired, perfume slightly faded under the smell of baby lotion and sweat. She had kissed my cheek, thanked me over and over, said she was running late, that this work trip was important, that she trusted me more than anyone. Then she pressed her baby into my arms and hurried back out the door, leaving behind a faint trail of jasmine and worry. And then there was just me, and the baby, and the silence. At first, I did not notice it. I only saw a small, warm bundle, wrapped in soft pink cotton, breathing with tiny, careful breaths. Her skin was smooth and pale, her mouth slightly open as if she were about to tell me a secret in her sleep. I smiled without thinking, the way women do when they see a new life so small and fragile. I shifted her in my arms to see her better. That was when my breath caught her nose, a little narrower than my sister's nose, with the same familiar bridge I had kissed on my husband's face more times than I could count. Her eyelids fluttered, and when her eyes opened, they focused with a strange, quiet intensity that reminded me of the way he looked at me when he was thinking, really thinking, trying to understand something I had not yet said out loud. My heart stuttered. No, I told myself. Babies borrow faces from everyone around them. People love to say who a child looks like. I had heard it all my life. She looks like the father. She looks like the grandmother. She has the uncle mouth. These things were normal, common, harmless. But then the baby mouth trembled. Just a little. Before relaxing into a tiny, almost smile. A familiar curve pulled gently at one corner. The same crooked softness that appeared whenever my husband tried not to laugh. I felt my fingers tighten around the baby blanket. From the kitchen, I heard water running, a spoon tapping against a cup. My husband's voice floated down the hallway, low and easy as he hummed a tune he always hummed when he was calm. When he was himself, when our life felt simple. He called out, asking if I wanted tea. His tone was light, the way it always was. Normal. I looked down at the baby again. That same nose, those eyes, that almost smile. For a heartbeat, the house around me blurred. The walls, the fan, the window. The sound of the clock faded away. All I could see was this tiny face and the possibility that my mind whispered to me in a voice I did not want to recognize. What if this child is not just my sister baby? What if she is also my husband's child? A soft whimper escaped the baby lips, and she wriggled closer against my chest, seeking comfort. I adjusted my grip automatically, rocking her gently, even as something inside me began to sink. The sofa, the curtains, the television, the familiar framed photos on the wall all looked the same as they had that morning. Yet nothing felt the same anymore. My life before that moment sat quietly behind me. My life after that moment was waiting, patient and unforgiving, just ahead. And I was standing right between them, holding the very proof in my arms. Before that afternoon, my days moved in a gentle rhythm that felt steady and safe, like a familiar song I could hum without thinking. I woke each morning to the soft light slipping past the curtains and the faint sound of my husband in the kitchen, moving pots and cups with the same clumsy care he had carried since the early days of our marriage. He never tried to be quiet. He only tried to be thoughtful. And somehow, that was enough to make my heart soften every morning. The smell of coffee drifted down the hallway, warm and comforting. He always brewed it a little stronger than I liked, but he balanced mine with milk until it turned the color of caramel. Breakfast was simple most days: toast lightly browned, a fried egg, sometimes sticky rice from the vendor across the street if he woke up early enough to fetch it. He would place the food in front of me with a small nod, a silent gesture that had become our version of good morning when words were not needed. Our house was small but lived in with love. The paint near the windows was beginning to peel, curling slightly at the corners like old paper. The sofa cushions had softened over time, molded to our bodies in a way that felt like memory. We had a rug in the living room that had been with us since our first apartment together. It was faded now, worn thin at the center, but I could not get rid of it. It carried the imprint of too many quiet evenings, too many footsteps, too many moments when life had felt steady. My husband worked long hours. but he always tried to be home by dinner. I cooked most nights, filling the kitchen with the scent of garlic and fish sauce. When he entered the house, he would loosen his collar, breathe in, and say something like, "That smells good," with a warmth that made the tiredness of the day lift off my shoulders. We ate side by side at our small wooden table near the window, sharing stories about our day while the neighborhood sounds drifted in from outside. My sister was a frequent visitor. Lena arrived in bursts of energy, her laughter echoing through the house long before she stepped into the doorway. She was younger than me, playful and unpredictable, the kind of woman who dyed her hair a new shade each season and wore bright skirts even on rainy days. She carried the scent of jasmine tea everywhere she went. If she hugged me, my clothes would hold that fragrance for hours. Before the baby, she would come over to paint her nails at my kitchen table, sipping iced tea while telling me stories about her day. After the baby arrived, everything changed in her small apartment. The smell of nail polish was replaced by baby lotion and warm laundry. Her steps became slower, her laughter softer. The way she held herself shifted, as if the weight of responsibility sat on her shoulders whether she was standing or sitting. When she needed help, she always came to me. She called me the steady one, the reliable one, the person who could make soup that tasted like safety and give advice that did not make her feel judged. I never thought twice about opening my door to her, not even at the latest hour or the earliest morning. I was her older sister. That meant something to me. So when she told me she was pregnant and alone, I held her hand through every stage. From her first trembling confession to the nights she thought she would not survive the weight of carrying both a child and her fears. I rubbed her back when her body ached. I bought her vitamins when she forgot. I listened to her cry and tried to remind her she was stronger than she felt. My husband supported her too. He brought her snacks when she visited. He joked with her gently to keep her spirits up. He never seemed bothered by her presence. If anything, he seemed to welcome the liveliness she brought into our quiet home. I used to smile when I saw the two of them talking. I thought it meant he understood how much she meant to me. And when the baby was born, little May with her soft cheeks and tiny fists, my world seemed to grow softer. I loved the way she wriggled when I held her, the way her breath tickled against my neck when she fell asleep. I loved how her cry rose and fell like a small song that somehow did not irritate me the way I expected it to. I loved her because she was part of us, part of my sister, part of our family. I never imagined that while I opened my heart wide, a secret was living quietly in the space between us. If you had asked me then, I would have said my life felt full. Not perfect, but warm. Not without worry, but held together by love and routine and trust. I believed in the people I loved. I believed in the home we had built. I believed in the family we were shaping. In the shared meals and soft nights and laughter that echoed against our walls. But all of that was before the weekend that cracked the foundation of everything I had known. Before the moment I held a baby who looked too familiar. Before the truth started whispering at the edges of my mind. I began to notice the first shift the very next morning, though at the time I tried to brush it off as nothing more than tiredness or imagination. Suspicion never comes like thunder. It comes quietly, like a soft tapping on a window you do not want to open. The sun had barely risen when I woke to the sound of May stirring in the guest room. Her whimpers were gentle, like she was trying not to wake a world she did not yet recognize. I wrapped a shawl around my shoulders and walked down the hallway. The floor was cool beneath my feet. The house was still sleeping. When I stepped into the room, she looked up at me with those dark, intentional eyes. She stretched her tiny arms toward me, and the way she reached made something inside my chest flutter, in a way I could not name. I lifted her with more tenderness than I planned to give. Her scent lingered against my skin. Warm milk, powder, innocence. I fed her in the rocking chair near the window, the morning light beginning to glow faintly against the curtains. Outside, a bird sang a slow, waking melody. I watched May's eyelashes flutter as she drank, her small fingers curling around mine. And again, that feeling returned. A familiarity that pressed too deeply. Her mouth curved exactly the way his did, when he was trying not to smile. Her tiny brow furrowed in the same stubborn way he looked at me when he concentrated on something. It was like observing a shadow of the man I loved in a child who should not have belonged to him in any way. I shut my eyes, willing the thoughts away. Babies looked like everyone. That was what I kept telling myself. People bless them with resemblance like they were giving gifts. I had heard it my whole life. She looks just like her uncle. He has his grandfather eyes. These things were common. But this did not feel common. When my husband stepped into the doorway a few minutes later, the quiet inside me twisted into something sharper. He paused when he saw me feeding May. His hand tightened around the edge of the doorframe. The little humming tune he always hummed in the morning stopped abruptly, cut off like a string pulled too tight. "You are awake early," he said. His voice sounded normal enough, but the way he kept his distance made my breath still. I smiled and nodded, rocking the baby gently. He lingered for a moment, eyes flicking toward the child, then toward me. Something unreadable moved across his face, something I could not catch before it disappeared. Then he took a step back. "I should shower," he murmured. He walked away quickly. Too quickly. That was the first thread in my mind. Throughout the day, the unease grew in small ways. Every time I caught him looking at her, his gaze shifted, like he was afraid of being watched. He never held her. Not once. And that was strange, because before this weekend, he always held her when my sister visited. He used to take her from my arms with a soft laugh, bouncing her gently until she giggled. But now he kept his hands to himself. At lunchtime, he offered to run to the market to get more vegetables. We did not need vegetables. The fridge was full. I pointed that out gently, but he insisted, saying he needed fresh air. He left before I could argue. I watched him through the window as he hurried down the street. His shoulders were tense, his steps uneven. He was avoiding something. Avoiding me. Avoiding the baby. The realization pressed against my ribs like a dull ache. Later that afternoon, while May napped in the crib, my phone rang. It was my sister. Her voice was breathless, rushed, almost too bright. She asked how the night went, whether the baby slept, whether she fussed. I answered calmly, keeping my voice steady, but something in her tone prickled beneath my skin. She sounded nervous, not like a mother checking in, more like someone waiting for a verdict. Then I heard it. A faint sound behind her. A baby's whimper. Soft. Familiar. But May was asleep in the next room. I sat up slowly on the sofa, my heart picking up its pace. "Where are you?" I asked. There was a pause. The kind of silence where a person decides whether to lie or tell the truth. "I am at the hotel," she said. Her voice wavered. I swallowed hard. "Is someone with you?" She hesitated again. Then she said no. Too quickly. I should have pressed her then. I should have demanded answers. But I stayed quiet, listening to her shaky breathing. The little whimpering sound came again in the background. Unmistakable. My stomach knotted. I ended the call gently, but my pulse continued to race long after the phone grew silent in my hand. The suspicion had entered fully now. It stayed close beside me as I moved around the house, as I changed May's diaper, as I watched my husband avoid every chance to be near her. Small moments that once meant nothing became sharp clues. Flickering eyes, nervous hands, avoided glances, strange calls. Before that weekend, I trusted the people I loved without hesitation. But that day, with each breath, I felt myself slipping into a truth I was not ready to see. And the quiet whisper inside me grew louder. Something is wrong. Terribly wrong. The truth did not arrive like a scream. It arrived like a whisper that grew sharper with every hour until it finally cut into me clean and deep. That evening, the house felt too quiet. The kind of quiet where every sound becomes louder than it should be. The clink of a spoon. The creak of the floor. Even the slow breathing of a sleeping baby seemed to echo. My husband hovered around the edges of the rooms like a man trying to disappear. He checked his phone often. Too often. Each time he looked at the screen, something in his face tightened. He tried to hide it. But guilt has a way of shining through the smallest cracks. I carried May in my arms as I walked through the house, humming softly to her. Anything to focus my thoughts somewhere other than the storm rising inside me. Her tiny body pressed against mine felt warm and trusting, completely unaware that her existence carried a truth her mother and my husband had buried deep. As I laid her in the crib and adjusted the blanket around her, a memory flashed across my mind. A memory I had forgotten until that moment. Months ago, my sister had sat at my table, rubbing her temples with shaking hands. Her eyes were red. Her voice quivered as she told me she had made mistakes she did not know how to fix. At the time, I assumed she meant her ex, or the stress of raising a child alone. But now that memory resurfaced with a new shape. A darker one. I stepped out of the guest room, closing the door softly behind me. The air felt heavy. I pressed a hand against my chest, breathing slowly, as if trying to convince my heart not to run ahead of me. That was when I heard my husband's voice. He was in the kitchen, speaking in a low tone. Too low. I moved quietly down the hallway, each footstep careful, measured. The shadows from the living room stretched long across the tiles, reaching toward me like quiet warnings. I stopped just before the doorway. He did not know I was there. His back was turned, one hand gripping the counter, the other holding his phone to his ear. His shoulders were tense, rising and falling with each shaky breath. Then he said the words that changed everything. I did not mean for it to go this far. The world inside me stilled. His voice dropped even lower. We agreed. We said we would keep this quiet. My knees weakened. I clung to the wall for balance. Another pause. His breathing trembled. She has the baby right now. I did not expect it to feel like this. My hand covered my mouth, muffling the startled gasp that rose up my throat. The baby. He meant May. My mind raced. My heart pounded so loudly I feared he would hear it from where he stood. He continued, voice breaking. We just need to get through this weekend. Then we figure out what to do. Please, just let me handle it. My vision blurred. The floor beneath me felt unsteady. The truth was not knocking now. It had walked straight through the door and stood in front of me without shame. My husband was talking to my sister. My husband was hiding something with my sister. My husband was terrified because the secret was sleeping in the next room. I leaned back slowly, stepping away before my legs gave out beneath me. I moved into the living room, breathing in short, careful bursts. My body felt numb, hollowed out from the inside. When he finally ended the call, his footsteps sounded in the hallway. Slow. Weighted. I sat down on the sofa, my hands in my lap, staring at the floor. I tried to feel something solid beneath me, but even the ground felt unreliable. He entered the room and stopped abruptly when he saw me. His eyes widened. His breath caught. The color drained from his face. You are awake, he whispered. The lie in his voice was soft, but unmistakable. I lifted my head and looked at him. I did not yell. I did not accuse. I simply watched him with a calm that felt foreign, almost frightening. Who were you talking to? His throat tightened. He swallowed hard. Just work, he said. Work. The lie tasted bitter in the air between us. I stood slowly. My legs trembled, but I steadied myself. The room felt too small, too filled with everything he was not saying. I walked past him without another word. He reached out as if to stop me, but his hand dropped before it touched my sleeve. His voice broke. Please. Wait. I did not. I kept walking until I reached the bedroom. I closed the door softly, too softly for the storm inside me. Inside the room, my breath finally collapsed. My hands shook violently. I pressed them against my face, feeling the tears rise and fall without sound. The betrayal wrapped itself around my lungs like a rope, making it hard to breathe. I thought of every moment my sister had turned her face away when I asked about the baby's father. I thought of every quiet look my husband had exchanged with her when he thought I was not watching. I thought of every time she avoided conversations about the past, every time he seemed to tense when she mentioned her pregnancy. Each memory rearranged itself with cruel clarity. I sank onto the edge of the bed and whispered to myself, No, this cannot be true. But truth does not soften itself just because you beg it to. The door creaked open behind me. He stood there, his face pale, his eyes glossy with fear. He stepped inside slowly, like he was approaching a wounded animal. He whispered my name. I did not respond. He took another step. Please, let me explain. I still did not look at him. His voice trembled. It was a mistake. A night that should never have happened. I thought it would stay hidden. I thought she would never tell you. I lifted my head slowly. You thought she would never tell me because you expected her to carry the burden alone. He dropped his gaze. I stood up, the numbness inside me giving way to something sharper. Is May yours? His breath caught. His eyes closed. His chest rose and fell with a heavy, defeated sigh. Yes. The room tilted. My vision blurred again. I reached for the bedpost to steady myself. He reached out a hand. I stepped back. Do not touch me. The words came out calm. Too calm. He lowered his hand slowly. Tears filled his eyes, but I felt nothing for them. Nothing at all. How long have you known? I whispered. His answer came out like a broken confession. Since before she was born. I closed my eyes. Everything I had suspected, everything I had feared, everything I had prayed, was only imagination. stood right in front of me, wearing the face of the man I loved. He lifted a trembling hand to his chest. I am sorry. Please believe me. I never meant for this to hurt you. I opened my eyes and looked at him. It does not matter what you meant. You did it. He took a shaky step toward me. I stood tall. I whispered, "You betrayed me with my own sister." The words hung heavy in the room, shaping themselves into something that could never be undone. At that moment, I realized that nothing in my life would ever return to the way it had been before. The truth had arrived, and it had broken everything. For a long moment after the truth left his mouth, I stood there in the dim light of our bedroom, feeling the world tilt and sway beneath my feet. Betrayal has a strange way of stealing gravity. It loosens everything inside you. Memories slip. Certainties melt. Even your own breath feels unfamiliar. My husband stood in front of me with his shoulders slumped, his hands shaking, his eyes begging for something he no longer had the right to ask for. I could see his lips trembling, waiting for me to speak. But there were no words gentle enough to soften the truth, and no words sharp enough to match the pain. Something inside me clicked. Not into anger, not into despair, into clarity. I stepped past him without another glance. My body moved on instinct, guided by a simple need: space. I walked down the hallway, the wooden floor cool beneath my feet, the walls narrowing around me. When I reached the guest room, I opened the door slowly. May slept soundly in the crib, her tiny chest rising and falling in soft rhythms. Her innocence filled the room like warm light, untouched by any of the ugliness that now swirled around her. I leaned over the crib and watched her for a long moment, letting the steadiness of her breathing anchor me. She was not at fault. Not for her existence. Not for the truth she carried. Not for the pain now stretching itself inside my ribs. I brushed a fingertip along her soft cheek. I whispered, "You did not choose any of this." When I stepped back into the hallway and closed the door, I felt something settle inside me, not peace, not forgiveness, but purpose. I walked to the kitchen. The fluorescent light buzzed faintly overhead, its cold glow falling across the countertops. I pulled a glass from the cabinet, filled it with water, and drank slowly, letting the coolness wash down a throat thick with grief. My husband hovered in the doorway behind me, afraid to come closer, afraid to leave. He looked like a man caught between two burning houses, unsure which one held his survival. He whispered, "Tell me what to do." The words drifted toward me, soft and desperate. I set the glass down carefully. "You do nothing," I said. "Nothing except answer what I ask." He nodded quickly, like a student waiting for instructions. It almost angered me, how obedient he became only when his lies had collapsed. I turned to face him fully for the first time since the truth had hit the air. "Tell me everything." His breath stilled. "Everything?" "Yes." He rubbed his forehead, closing his eyes as if the memories burned. His voice came out slow, broken. "It was one night. A stupid, weak night. You and I had fought. I went to get air. She was there. We talked too long. We drank a little. One thing blurred into another. And then, it happened." My stomach twisted. My hands curled against the counter to steady myself. "When did you find out she was pregnant?" "A few weeks after. She called me. She said she wanted me to know, but she would raise the baby alone. I told her I agreed. I told her it was better that way. I tried to forget it after that." "Forget." The words stabbed into me. "You cannot forget a child," I whispered. He lowered his head. Shame flickered across his face. "I tried. Every day. But when she was born," his voice wavered. "I saw her. Just once. From the hallway outside the maternity room. And I knew." I stared at him, my pulse thudding painfully. "Why did you let me hold her all these months without telling me?" He swallowed hard. "Because you loved her. Because I saw something in your face when you looked at her. And I thought, if I told you, it would shatter everything." "It has," I whispered. Silence pressed between us, heavy and painful. I moved past him again, heading to the living room. The night outside the window had deepened, the streetlights casting long, thin shadows across the floor. I stood by the curtains, gathering my thoughts, piecing together a plan not born of rage but of necessity. He followed at a distance, unsure, like a man afraid of the ground he walked on. I finally turned toward him. "I am going to see her. Tonight." His eyes widened. "Now? At this hour?" "Yes. Tonight." He took a small step forward, hands slightly raised. "Let me come with you." I shook my head. No. You have done enough. The words landed like a sharp slap. He lowered his hands slowly. I grabbed my bag from the sofa. Packed a few things for the baby. A bottle. A blanket. Her soft rabbit toy. My hands moved with a strange calmness. Every motion precise, deliberate. When I lifted May from the crib, she blinked awake, making a tiny confused sound. I held her close, rocking her gently until her little head rested against my shoulder. My husband stood helplessly near the doorway, his voice trembling. Please let me explain to her too. I turned to face him one last time. She is my sister. And you had a child with her. There is nothing left you can explain that will undo that truth. He flinched, his face tightening with pain. I headed toward the front door, baby in my arms. Each step felt like walking through water heavy. Slow, deliberate. When I reached the door, I paused with my hand on the knob. He whispered behind me, barely audible. Will you come back? I closed my eyes. The truth was simple. Not as the wife you knew. I did not wait for his reaction. I opened the door and stepped into the night. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain. The street was quiet. I tightened my hold on the baby and walked to the car with steady steps. I did not know what would happen when I faced my sister. I did not know what choices lay ahead. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Running from the truth was no longer an option. I would face it, all of it. Even if it broke me. Night settled across the city in a blanket of muted blue and gold as I drove toward the hotel where my sister was staying. The roads were quiet, only a few motorbikes weaving through the shadows, their headlights gliding across the asphalt like restless fireflies. May slept in the car seat behind me, her tiny breaths steady and soft, each one a reminder of how fragile and blameless she was in all this. My hands tightened around the steering wheel as the hotel came into view. A simple building, nothing remarkable, with a flickering neon sign that blinked like a tired eye. I parked near the entrance and took a moment to breathe, to settle the storm inside my chest. Inside the lobby, the air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old carpet. The receptionist barely glanced up as I passed. I stepped into the elevator, the doors closing with a soft sigh, sealing me in with my racing thoughts. When I reached her floor, May shifted slightly in my arms, pressing her cheek against my shoulder. Her warmth steadied me just enough to take the next steps down the hallway. I knocked once. Soft footsteps approached. The door opened slowly. My sister stood there with her eyes swollen, her face blotched from crying. She looked at me, then at the baby, and something inside her seemed to collapse. I stepped inside without a word. The room was dim, scattered with used tissues, half-eaten food containers, and the heavy scent of guilt. My sister closed the door quietly behind us, then turned, her back pressed against the wood as if she needed it to hold her up. She whispered, "I knew you would come." For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she began to cry. Not the soft kind, not the quiet kind, but the messy, heaving sobs that came from deep inside a person who knows she has broken something precious. She covered her face with both hands. The sound of her crying filled the room, raw and aching. I held May closer, not yet ready to offer comfort, not yet ready to speak. My voice felt trapped beneath layers of pain. When her sobs finally softened, she lifted her head and wiped her cheeks with trembling fingers. She whispered, "I am so sorry." I lowered my gaze to the baby in my arms. Her eyes were closed, her little mouth slightly open, completely unaware of the world she had been born into. I spoke quietly. "The truth will not stay hidden anymore." My sister's breath caught. Her hands fell slowly to her sides. She whispered, "Did you tell him I talked to you?" I shook my head. "He told me himself." Her face paled, and she sank onto the edge of the bed. I sat in the chair opposite her, placing May gently onto the duvet. The baby stirred, then settled again. For a moment, we both watched her, the weight of our shared bloodline heavy in the air. My sister spoke first, her voice small. "I never wanted to ruin your life. I swear to you. When it happened, I was hurt. I was lonely. I was angry. I was everything except strong enough to walk away." I listened, but the explanations felt like rain on old wood, soft, but unable to restore what had rotted. She continued, tears brimming again. "I thought I could raise her alone. I thought he would stay away. But then you held her. And when I saw the way you looked at her, I didn't know how to tell you without breaking everything." I swallowed hard. "You broke everything anyway." She bowed her head, accepting the truth. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Then she whispered something so fragile it nearly disappeared into the air. "Everyone will know now, won't they?" Her words hung there, trembling. I inhaled. Yes, the baby would grow, and her resemblance would only sharpen with time. The truth would slip through the cracks of every avoided question, every awkward family gathering, every glance too long or too careful. Secrets like this do not stay buried. They have a way of rising to the surface slowly, painfully, until the whole world can see them. My sister whispered, "Our family will never look at me the same." I met her eyes. "They will not look at either of you the same." She covered her face again, shoulders shaking. At that moment, the hotel room door clicked softly. My sister froze. I turned. The door opened just enough for someone to slip inside. My husband. He must have followed me, or guessed where I went. He stepped in quietly, closing the door behind him. His eyes moved from me, to my sister, to the baby on the bed. For a moment, his face crumpled into something close to despair. My sister whispered, "You should not be here." He swallowed hard. "We cannot run from this anymore." His voice cracked. "We cannot hide. Not from each other. Not from her. Not from anyone." He nodded toward May. "Our daughter deserves better than a life built on shadows." The word daughter hit the room like a blow. My sister gasped softly. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the weight of that word settle into my bones. When I opened them, both of them were watching me, waiting, hurting, lost. I spoke with a calmness I did not feel. "This is no longer a secret between three people. This will affect our parents, our cousins, our entire family. You both have to face what you did. Not just with me, but with everyone who believed in us." My sister looked sick. My husband looked defeated. He whispered, "Tell us what to do." For the first time since the truth came out, I felt a strange strength return to me, not born of forgiveness, but of necessity. I said, "You will tell the truth. Together. To everyone who deserves to know." My sister's hand flew to her mouth. My husband closed his eyes. I continued, "You will own the consequences of your actions. You will face the shame, the questions, the tears. I will not protect you from any of it." The room fell silent. Then my sister whispered, "And you? What will you tell them?" I looked at her with a steadiness that had taken all night to find. The truth, only the truth. Because lies had already taken enough from all of us. The days that followed moved slowly, heavy like damp clothes clinging to my skin. Every step felt deliberate, every breath weighed down by the truth we had finally dragged into the light. But even in that heaviness, something inside me shifted, a quiet determination to rebuild myself, piece by piece, without rushing, without pretending. My sister and my husband told the truth to our family just as I insisted. Not all at once, but in steady, painful steps. Each confession carried fresh waves of disbelief, anger, sorrow. I watched from a distance, not to punish them, but because I needed space to breathe on my own. People tried to speak to me, offering comfort, offering opinion, offering pity, but I wanted none of it. My voice had been buried long enough under other people's choices. I needed silence to hear myself again. I moved back to my mother's house for a short while. A place with old wooden floors, soft pillows that smelled of lavender, and windows that opened to a small garden where sunlight filtered through green leaves. My mother did not ask questions. She made warm soup. She folded blankets. She placed a gentle hand on my shoulder when I walked by. Sometimes the deepest comfort comes from presence, not words. I spent my mornings sitting by the garden window with a cup of tea, letting the world slow enough for my heart to catch up with me. There were days I cried quietly, without force, letting the tears fall until they dried on their own. There were other days I felt strangely peaceful, as if my heart had found a resting place in its brokenness. People say healing comes in stages, but I learned it comes in moments. Small, unexpected moments. One afternoon, my sister came to visit. She stood on the doorstep, holding May in her arms. Her eyes were swollen again, but not from fresh tears, rather from the long stretch of shame and guilt she carried each day. She murmured a greeting, but her voice trembled. I stepped aside, letting her enter. May reached for me the moment she saw me, her tiny hands opening and closing, her little body leaning forward. I hesitated for a breath. Then I took her into my arms, feeling her warmth settle against my chest. She cooed softly, burying her face against my shoulder. My sister watched, her hands twisting nervously. "You do not have to take her if I cut her off with a quiet whisper. She is innocent. My sister's face crumpled, and she lowered her gaze to the floor. She whispered, I do not expect forgiveness. I do not expect your life to look the same. I only hope, someday, you might let me make things right. Even a little. I held May closer, feeling her heartbeat against mine. Forgiveness is not a door I could open on command. It was a path, uneven and long, and I had only just stepped onto it. But I did not want hatred to raise this child. I did not want bitterness to become her inheritance. So I whispered the truest thing I had in me. I do not forgive you yet, but I am learning how to breathe again. Maybe one day, forgiveness will come when I am ready. My sister nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. But she did not ask for more. She simply watched as May curled her tiny fingers around mine. For the first time since everything shattered, I did not feel anger rise when I looked at the child. Instead, I felt a deep, quiet ache, a kind of sorrow that still held love around the edges. She was part of my sister. Part of the man I once loved. Part of a mistake, yes. But also part of my family in a way I could not erase. That day, I made a choice. I would not punish the baby for the sins of the adults. I would not carry bitterness into rooms where she slept. I would not let her grow up feeling like a reminder of pain. I would choose compassion not for her parents, but for her. As the weeks passed, I built new routines for myself. I went back to work. I started cooking again, filling my mother's kitchen with the familiar scent of garlic and rice and broth. I walked in the evenings when the air cooled, letting the quiet hum of the neighborhood settle into my bones. I met with my husband once, only once. We spoke in a small cafe near the market where the chatter of strangers softened the tension between us. He told me he loved me, that he wanted to try again, that he would do anything to restore what we had. But wounds like mine do not close because someone wishes them to. I looked at him with a calm I had earned through sleepless nights and long reflections. I said, I loved you once. Deeply. But trust is not something I can rebuild with words. Not now. Not soon. He nodded, tears gathering in his eyes. But he did not argue. We parted quietly. Two people who once dreamed of growing old together now walking separate paths. And strangely, I felt a sense of steadiness settle inside me. The kind that comes not from victory, but from survival. I visited May often. Not because duty demanded it, but because my heart found peace in her presence. She laughed when I made silly faces. She grabbed my fingers with surprising strength. She looked at me with wide eyes that seemed to hold questions she was too small to ask. I answered her with gentleness. You are loved. I whispered to her once as I rocked her to sleep. No matter how you came into this world, you are loved. Healing did not arrive in a rush. It arrived slowly, in the quiet spaces between breaths, in the soft forgiveness I extended only when it felt honest. I learned that brokenness does not have to define the rest of your life. Sometimes, it becomes the place where you find your strength. Healing did not give me back the life I once had. It gave me something quieter, something steadier, something that felt more like truth than the dreams I used to cling to. I learned to let the days unfold without forcing answers. I learned to breathe through the questions that had no solutions. And slowly, gently, I learned to trust my own strength again. My sister is rebuilding her life with May by her side. Some days, I see the weight of her choices in the curve of her shoulders. Other days, I see hope when she watches her daughter laugh. I do not know what our relationship will become, but I know it will not be built on lies ever again. Whatever grows between us now must grow from honesty. As for my husband, our roads have separated. I do not walk with anger toward him anymore, but I no longer walk beside him either. Sometimes the deepest form of forgiveness is letting go of the life that hurt you, so you can step toward a life that heals you. I am learning to choose myself, to choose peace, to choose a future shaped, not by betrayal, but by quiet courage. And every time I hold May, every time she rests her small head against my shoulder, I remember that innocence can still exist inside broken stories. She is not a symbol of my pain. She is a symbol of what I survived. Now, as I sit here sharing this story with you, I wonder about the paths we all take, the secrets we carry, the truths we face only when the world stops spinning long enough for us to see clearly. Would you have made the same choices I did? Would you have stayed, or would you have walked away? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. And if this story touched something in your heart, stay a while. There are more stories to share, more lessons to unfold, more voices like mine whispering through the quiet. Thank you for listening.